Oh, there we go. Good morning, everyone. Good morning to you, Lori. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing great. How are you doing this morning?
I am doing good. Cannot complain. The sun is shining, so it's going to be a good
I
day.
I get that. And tax day is done, or those who have the extension, but I'm not going to talk about tax today. That's all I'm going to say is tax day is done.
Well, on that note, good morning to everyone out there. Let me go ahead and do the intro because, Lori, you've got a really fun guest today with tons of
I do.
info. So,
I got another big topic to cover today.
all right, let's go ahead and, oh, there we go. I know that the numbers are still rising, so we'll go ahead and get started. I know a ton of you are frequent flyers. Thank you again for always joining us. We love to see your names because we can't see your faces. Let me go ahead and start the slideshow. Lori, can you see my screen okay?
I can.
All right, let's dive in. Good morning, everyone. My name is Lauren Simpson, and I'm with the SBDC, or the Small Business Development Center. We're a national program with over 1,000 locations across the country, and we offer no-cost services to local small businesses. Now, we offer our services at no cost to you because your tax dollars have already taken care of our fees. That'll be the only time I mention tax because we're not talking about taxes anymore. Tax day is over. For the Los Angeles network, we serve the Los Angeles, Santa Barbara, and Ventura counties. And you can see our physical locations on the map in front of you. Please note that most of our centers are still meeting via Zoom and phone call. But as far as locations, you can see that we're in Camarillo, Santa Clarita, all the way over to Laverne, not to pass up, of course, Pasadena. We're throughout Los Angeles, the South Bay, all the way down into Long Beach. Now, we'd love to get in contact with you or have you contact us because we offer tons of services. Again, free services. We offer no-cost business advising, and so you're able to sit one-on-one with one of our business experts. And we're talking about people with expertise, years and years of expertise, ranging in the genres of marketing, if you are looking to get some market research done, if you are just starting out and looking to create a business plan, or if you're looking to get your numbers in order, which is extremely important, no matter how scary it might be, you might be able to get a meeting with our guru of numbers, Miss Lori Williams. And then we also offer virtual trainings, which are comprehensive workshops, much like the show you've joined today. So again, we're here to help, and we'd love for you to contact us today. You can reach us by phone, 866-588-7232, or via online. You can go to smallbizla.org/new client. Now, if you've reached us and you're outside of the Los Angeles, Santa Barbara, or Ventura counties, please go to americassbdc.org/find your SBDC. Lori, really quickly, I'm going to do some housekeeping.
Okay,
For those of you.
We have Emma with us. Good morning, Emma. And so I have to tell everybody, thank you so much, Emma. So yesterday was my birthday. Emma somehow magically remembered that. I have no idea how, right? And she sent the funniest email. She said it was so fitting that my birthday was on tax day. Okay, and something even more funny about yesterday being my birthday, for an entire year, Lauren, and I even said it on the show, I told everybody I was turning 60. So 3 weeks ago, maybe not any more than that, a friend of mine said, oh, then you were born in 63 like my sister, right? And I was like, no, I'm born in 64. And he goes, then you can't be turning 60. I being the all guru of all numbers, I got like this brain freeze and I had to get out a calculator. I did not turn 60. I turned 59. I feel so young because I was just convinced I was 60. So how about waking up and suddenly finding out you're turning a year younger than you think? Isn't that hilarious?
That's amazing. And happy birthday to you, Lori. I hope it was the best day. I mean, you had the best gift though, right? You're a year younger.
I'm
That's
a year
amazing.
younger. I know, I did. I mean, I have never woke up feeling so young on a birthday in my entire life. And I literally don't know where I came up with that I was turning 60, but I was so convinced of it that I was arguing it with him. So yeah, that's pretty funny, huh?
It's amazing. I love it.
Okay, go back on with your house cleaning.
I was just going to say, please put all questions into the Q&A. I just saw your note. It should be available to everyone. I'll redo it right now, but the chat, we're going to reserve that for any conversations you'd like to have between each other or related to the topic, of course, or any links that Lori would like to share with you. I'm going to pop them in there for you. So Lori, I am going to send it over to you. I'm excited for today's show. And happy birthday again.
Thank you so much. Okay, guys, let me get something going here. So I have a lot to share with you as always, and I have a topic or theme that we're going to cover today, something I've been wanting to discuss. And as always, I always tell you that what I'm doing is I'm talking about, oh, sorry, I'm just going crazy here with the slides. I'm always talking about what I'm seeing happening during the week, what I'm seeing a lot of people discussing in the meetings, etc. And so that's part of my topic today. And I'm very fortunate to have a guest come on and continue the theme. So first of all, upcoming classes, I've got my 2 series, session 2 and session 3. Both of them are about managerial accounting, where I delve into the numbers and talk about what is the least amount of information you must be aware of, how to know your profitability, and how to assess certain internal decisions within your company. To that end, we're going to talk about something in that regards in a second. But before I do, I wanted to bring the upcoming shows because I'm going to go through some other slides. So I wanted to get this out of the way so you knew. Next week, we got our famous Deborah Darris coming on, our social media goddess. We're going to talk about a combination of social media trends, also mental attitudes about being an entrepreneur, a whole bunch of topics. I've also invited the following week, Clarissa Wilson to come back. Nerdy Number Lovers LLC. You got to love that name. She is the person who came on and talked to us about QuickBooks Online. So many questions, so much to discuss. I wanted to bring her back on and delve into what you need to know, especially if you're syncing the data, ways to check, ways to make sure it's correct, what to know when you're interviewing somebody to handle it for you. Tons and tons of subject on QuickBooks. Then on May 10th, Arnell McAtee is going to come on, who owns Arnell Originals, or I should say who owned. Fascinating story, guys. She started her company based on a dietary need, which she's going to get involved and tell you about, ran the company, and then just recently sold the company. So she is going to walk us through her entire entrepreneurial journey, just like Rob did many, many shows ago. It's going to be a really good one to hear about. Okay, so now about today. So the first thing we're going to do is I've got this little chart. I'm not expecting you guys to totally pick up these numbers or concept. It's just for me to explain something. So don't freak out, look at numbers, go, oh my God, what was she talking about? It's just concept. So here is my statement I'm going to make. And keep in mind, I got the word classes here kind of just reproduced, but these are also in my classes. So if you want to get into this more, you can take one of my financial literacy classes. So here's my statement, guys. I'm going to say something to the contrary. I know I do that a lot, and anybody who's met with me one-on-one knows I'm usually saying something that's not commonly heard out in the marketplace. All growth is not good growth. Okay. Now you might have heard that a bit. You might have heard all growth is not good growth. But what I'm especially seeing today that I want to communicate, and I'm going to communicate this from many different perspectives, is that too often what small companies do is they get engaged in this mental perceived trajectory that they're supposed to go with the business. Those of you who, especially my age, you grew up and you heard, well, you're supposed to get married, you're supposed to have kids, buy the picketed fence. I'm sure you guys, even that are way younger than me, have heard this analogy. It's where society tells us where we're supposed to go to. Well, the same things happens with small businesses. You're supposed to do this, you're supposed to start the company, you're supposed to get incorporated, you got to get a bunch of employees, get a brick and mortar, and then you're going to be successful. And it used to be, and then you're going to go IPO or sell the company. I'm seeing people back away from that one a little bit, seeing it's not always the truth. But what I'd like to talk about is this growth process. So what we're seeing is that people are just perceiving they need to go to that route. They end up growing, be it hire an employee. There's many things I can say, but today we're going to talk about hiring employees. And it ends up with, have you ever talked to people or you yourself where the employees make more money than you are making? That's not a good thing. So here's a concept I'm just going to run through real quickly. I'm not expecting you to see these numbers to understand, but it's just listen to what I'm saying. Now, I made up small numbers. I'm not trying to make anything confusing here, but the first thing I want to express that when we look at, if we want to use the word success, I'm not big into the word success and the way people use it. I think it creates kind of an emotion that's not needed. But if we go to success, to me, success in a business is to be able to buy a quart of milk. Okay, because most of the people I know are not in the business just because I want to have fun. Yes, that's true. They also have to eat, right? So success is you have to buy a quart of milk. Where that is identified is right here at net income. It's not revenue, it's net income. Net income is what determines if you can buy a quart of milk. So say you're moving along and you've got this number is net income. Like I said, these are fictitious made up numbers just to communicate something to you. So you have 10,520 per year, whatever, it's just a made up number. You say, okay, we're busy, we're growing, we need to hire someone, or maybe there's another reason, AB5, which we're going to get into a minute. So we take it and pay for an employee. Now, it's not just the employee and the payroll taxes and the workman's comp that everybody talks about. It's also the marketing and sales dollars to get you to this new revenue that will be required to reach the same profitability once you add on these expenses. So say the number 6,000, I'm just hypothetical. Well, if you add 6,000 to your overhead, immediately you're down to 4,520. So your sales have to increase by 13,000 to get you back to where you were. Not more profitable, back to where you were. So they have to increase by 13,000 more to be profitable, to make that hire worth it. So what I'm saying is not all hiring decisions are a good decision. And I'm going to say something really shocking, that sometimes it's better to say no and not take on the business, raise prices, get less customers, than to actually grow because you're just seeing people purchase. So what I'm saying, and I'm wanting to invite a new idea, that it's time to choose financial structures based on your personal goals and the reality of the situation. Can you add that amount of sales? How long will it take? Do you have the money to invest in the marketing to get there? Okay. So this concept to me is more important than ever, given the difficulty that some people have obtaining loans, economic uncertainty, and also the increase in HR laws, which brings us to my delight of the guest that we have brought back today. Xiomara Palma, founder and CEO of Solve It HR, is a certified human resource professional with over 15 years of HR experience across multiple industries. She specializes in helping small businesses remain in compliance and workplace regulations. And from my personal opinion, who's known a lot of HR consultants, she is the best. She not only knows her stuff, but she knows how to explain it in a very simple manner. Thank you so much for coming back on the show. You are such a gift to the show.
Lori. Thank you for such a great introduction. It's a pleasure to be here with you this morning. Thanks for having me again. This is round 3, I believe.
Is it round 3? I know it's been a lot. Like I said, I'm always like, I get her back on the show. I got to get her back.
It's always fun. Yes, it's always fun.
Now, Xiomara, I talked a bit at the beginning and just trying to emphasize that maybe bringing on an employee is not the best financial decision, right? But at the same time, as many of the people know, AB5, which we'll first start out by you explaining what it is, has caused people to kind of force them to hire employees where in the past they may not have had to, right? So what it does is it kind of is pushing people down this road, and this road may not be financially advantageous. So if I'm trying to pull people back and saying, well, maybe this isn't the right route, what I was wanting to do today is kind of get some parameters where we're going to the expert that's going to help us to understand what are our choices? What does this mean? Can we do this? Can we do that? So we need you and your expertise to unravel all these crazy laws that change every single day. So let's start out with, for some people that are not familiar with it, because I still find people that are not familiar with AB5. What is AB5? How does it affect them? And then I got to say, also get them convinced that they didn't just vote the law to go away, because many people think AB5 disappeared in voting, and it did not, as you know. So bring all of this to you make sense for us, okay? I'm going to just throw it to you for that.
Absolutely, Lori. So thanks. So AB5, what it did back in 2020 when it passed, it added an additional test for employers to gauge or to measure whether somebody classified as an independent contractor or as an employee. So prior to AB5, we had the traditional Borrello test that had been established in the late 80s sometime, and that had been the standard in place. But with AB5, that came out of a lawsuit from a company that classified its delivery drivers as independent contractors. And the court said, no, wait a minute, they're not independent contractors. They're delivering services from the company, and they're utilizing their own, their own vehicles, but they're not being reimbursed for them. So technically, they are your employees. So that's where AB5 stemmed out of, that lawsuit that basically gave like it paved a new path, or a new test, a new set of criteria by which employers now have to manage to classify workers as independent contractors or employees. And when that ABC test is not met, which essentially says, is the person free of control from the employer or from the hiring entity? Are they established business? And are they performing work as an independent contractor for what they are licensed to do? So if that criteria is not met, then they fall back onto the Borrello test, which mostly focuses on the exertion of control over the worker or over the work that's being performed.
Now, what I see a lot, and I'll give you an example in a second, is that, of course, over the years, hiring independent contractors has been a great financial aspect, and legal in many ways, but financially I'm focusing on, because you just need somebody to come in every once in a while, and this way you're not engaging somebody on a full-time or even part-time basis. You're able to kind of incrementally grow or handle a project or anything like this. But where it's my understanding that AB5 makes it really complicated, and I'm going to use my language that may not be correct, but you'll correct it for me, is when they say, is the person performing activities in the usual course of business? And this is the challenging sentence in my world, because, for an example, you've got a yoga studio. You have one person you want to bring in just Friday for an hour or two because you have a class that's overfilling. Where does that leave you if they're going to teach a yoga class because it's the usual course of business?
Right. So that's where we fall back onto the Borrello test, right? So we look at AB5 has the ABC test, and some of that criteria may not be met, or there may be exemptions from the ABC test for certain positions. And when we have those exemptions, we look at the Borrello test. So the question would really be, are they able to set their own hours? Do they have their own equipment? Do they have other clients that they contract with? Are they licensed in their occupation, or do they have like their own business set up as a separate entity? You would basically look at the exertion of control. Like, is the employer or the business owner of the yoga studio telling them how they should conduct the training, right? So is there a particular way that the work should be performed, and is this person being evaluated on the work that's being performed. That would indicate that this person is not an independent contractor, and they would fall more into of an employee. Because if you're evaluating their work, right, and you are requiring them to follow a certain a certain criteria or certain training to perform the work, then that's more aligned with an employee, rather than hiring an independent contractor who is an expert and is going to come and do their own thing, use their own tools, set their own hours, run the class how they know how to run the class, right, based on their expertise. Then the actual business owner telling them or directing them on how to do it.
Now, this is fascinating to me because this might give us an angle for companies such as this. And I use the yoga instructor because it's such a great example. So in that, if I'm understanding correctly, the yoga studio that wants to all of a sudden offer a class Friday at 10 o'clock because they got a bunch of people signed up, if they said to somebody else, hey, I want you to come in and I'm making stuff up, teach hatha yoga at 10, and they come and they do their own thing, and can they pay them like an independent contractor, although they're teaching yoga and the company offers teaching of yoga?
But that's where it gets muddy, right? So I think there may be an exemption for yoga studios from the AB5 or from the ABC test, but that's where it gets muddy to really define, it's a fine line to really define, is this person really an employee? Can I just pay them like sort of like a business to business type of deal, right? Like, are you're subcontracting them essentially, right? You're paying them, you're subcontracting them, or am I more of a, are they more of like an employee, and now do I need to bring them on board with payroll? So when when you compensate someone, you want to make sure that if you're subcontracting them, right, want to make sure that there is a contract in writing. Okay. That alone is not going to save you or like determine that they are completely an independent contractor, but it does help in the scheme of things to put it into perspective of what the relationship was and the intent of the relationship from the beginning. So having a contract in writing is essential to determine the relationship. You're a subcontractor, and here's the agreement that we came up with from the beginning of how you're going to be compensated. The other key thing is, are they able to negotiate their own rates? Okay. If they're not able to negotiate their own rates, and you are dictating as a business owner how what you're going to compensate them, then that's more of an employee than an independent contractor, right? So an independent contractor is going to tell you, these are the classes I can teach, and these are my rates. This is what they're going for. So essentially, you also want to capture those rates in that written agreement that's going to stipulate what the relationship is going to be.
Makes sense. And I'm a big advocate for contracts, and even if you're creating them internally, because if we set aside from the legal aspect, and I always look at it like strengthening the argument as well if it comes up, but I always say, a lot of times, even if you're doing an internal contract or an email where you've written out the rules of engagement, it tends to help to limit lawsuits because it's creating clarity. And so many lawsuits evolve because of misunderstanding and lack of clarity. Just the aspect of a contract, it aids in that. So that's a little side note I just wanted to mention with you bringing up that word of contract. But where I see this going, and I use this term, it may not be the correct one, but I call it the bona fide business. And I'll explain what I'm speaking of in this. When AB5 first came out, I was very interested to try to understand how the law set forth when it would be that you were doing business with somebody that's another company. So like for me, I have a company. I'm incorporated. You wouldn't be hiring me as an employee. That would never happen. When is it that that relationship remains intact, that it's still a business to business relationship? And so I just actively pulled up the law, and I was going to read, and it was going to be clear cut and simple, and it was going to go, oh, that's when, okay. And I'm done reading it, and I'm like, I have no idea when it's a bona fide business. And I do know at the very beginning of AB5, there was this, and I'm talking back in 2020, there was this move towards people saying, well, just get an LLC because then you're bona fide. I'm like, no, not according to what I'm reading.
Yeah.
Just getting an LLC is not going to do it. And so I heard a bunch of people were getting LLCs and going, okay, we got it covered. And I'm like, I don't know what it takes after reading this, but I know not just that. And that's all I know. Can you fill in the parameters of bona fide and what it means, and help us all in the audience understand not only what it means, but what did Lori just say?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think every time this topic comes up, I always have to like go back and refer to like, what was passed when it was passed, because there's just been so many other layers that have come after AB5. We had AB 2257 that passed the following year that basically gave a lot of exemptions for, not only for the business to business relationships, but also like in the music industry, because a lot of them are running into trouble or trying to figure out, like a music producer now is an employee. It's not an independent contractor anymore. So we did have AB 2257 that came as a sequel to AB5 to make a lot of exemptions. And as of right now, actually, there's like over 100 exemptions to AB5. So it's so hard to remember all of them. But again, so when we are talking about exemptions of AB5, we are going back to the original test, the Borrello test. Okay, so for the business to business exemption, originally a business service provider that was contracted by another business. So say I'm a business owner and I subcontract, let's say I subcontract a payroll company to help me, or I subcontract an accountant. So that subcontracted company couldn't have provided services directly to my employees. They had to provide the services directly to the business owner. So now there's an exemption that if the workers are actually performing the work, the subcontractors' employees are performing the work under that subcontractor, then it's okay for them to actually provide services to the business, to the contracting company's clients or customers.
Okay, so what you're saying is something I wasn't even aware of at first. Like if I contracted something out, I couldn't have one of my employees working on the project. It would have had to been a direct me to you. And then they said, okay, if the person has employees, they can also work on the project. That's okay. Is that what you're saying?
So yeah, essentially, if you had a because it gets really, where it gets really blurry. So I mean, essentially anybody could subcontract anybody, right? I mean, and we can argue about AB5 and the test and all that, but where the liability is, or where it comes down to, is if that subcontracted company does not carry workers' comp insurance, or in a situation I've been dealing with recently, a subcontractor company's employee was harassed by the contractor's employee. So that's where your liability falls. And in those circumstances, a judge or whoever is trying to determine who is responsible is always going to fall on that contractor, right? The person that hired the subcontractor to say, hey, did this person have workers' comp insurance? They didn't. Okay, then you're responsible. Did this person have the sexual harassment training? Or, can you show me if you're in compliance? Okay, no, then you are responsible. So that relationship of the subcontracted employees the contractor needs to ensure that those employees are actually, in fact, employees of the subcontractor. That
Gotcha.
the subcontractor is not also subcontracting those employees from somewhere else.
See, this
Right, so
makes sense to me because, like, even if you're applying for, let's say, a government type situation as a contractor, they want to make sure, and I know this being a CFO for many companies that had government contracts, right? So they want to make sure that you give a copy of the workman's comp, you give a copy of this. They're making sure that you, the subcontractor, have these people on staff as employees and have done correctly in so. And if not, it comes back on the person that hired the subcontract, which is really scary because here you're just thinking, I'm hiring somebody to do something. This is an arm's length transaction. It isn't going to affect me, how they're running their business. But in essence, if you did not check properly, it can, is what you're saying.
Yeah, you can. So as long as those employees are direct employees of the subcontracted company, then they can provide services directly to the customers of the contractor. Right. So if those employees are not outsourced or third parties or, subcontractors of subcontractors, then those employees can now engage or provide services directly to customers of the contracted company. But there's a criteria that needs to be met as well. Okay. So we're going back to the Barella test. The criteria is, that they are the subcontracted company is free of control from the contractor, right? The contractor is not telling them how to do the work, when they should arrive, what hours the work needs to be performed. They are also having a contract, right? The subcontractor and the contractor also have an agreement. The subcontractor also has all the business licenses or all the registrations and licenses needed to perform or to be engaged in the work that they are doing. They have the ability to market themselves and have business with other clients. They're not restricted to just that one contractor or that one company that contracted them. They have their own tools, their own equipment. Again, they really operate on their own. They set their own location. That's another one that, can be sort of a blurred line. They have their own location separate from the entity that is contracting them. A lot of times with subcontractors, in this particular situation I'm dealing with the employee that was harassed by the subcontracted employee that was harassed by the contractor's employee, they're actually in the same facility, in the same location. So that it gets a little tricky there because you're having the locations so close as to be able to make the argument that we are two complete separate entities operating independently from each other. So those are the things that the criteria that needs to be met in order to truly have an independent contractor relationship with other businesses that you are subcontracting.
And I remember reading, and I believe it was on a government website, and not to pick out any one in particular on the list you mentioned, but something I found interesting is the emphasis they had put on the marketing, that independent contractor has its own clients. And I even read that if it's a rather new company, it's doing marketing towards getting additional clients. So this marketing aspect, which you wouldn't think is going to be this big deal in AB5, seemed to be a layer of criteria, seeing if that independent contractor is actively pursuing new clients or additional clients as well. Did I read that correctly?
You did read that correctly. So that is part of, you can't just have anybody like you said in the beginning, set up an LLC and call themselves an independent contractor just to engage and be able to engage and work with like a particular company or a particular client and call it a day. Right. Yeah. So it needs to be, it's part of being an established business. meet or satisfying that criteria, being established business or established entity. So they do need to have, first of all, they need to have the freedom from anyone contracting them. They need to be able to have the freedom to market themselves, but they also need to be proactive in pursuing that marketing aspect. And also, do they have their, the questions could be like, do they have their own brochures? Do they have their own business card? That's, I guess that's just taking it down to real specifics there.
Yep.
For the
Yep.
marketing piece. But that's really what a judge could look at, whether this person had the ability to market themselves and engage in other business deals.
Gotcha. So now with this, what I want to bring up is, as everybody in the audience is probably sitting there going, oh my friggin' God, I don't even know whether this is an independent contractor or not. This is so crazy. I want to bring up the concept that this is a rather new law, and we can't necessarily say this will not pass, this will pass. Some things we can, but there's a lot of gray because of precedence. So I want to bring up and help the audience understand that why precedence, that word, is so important in understanding how the law will be applied, and why all of the things we keep talking about is, I use the word strengthen the argument, what those mean. And I think it's a good time to kind of mention precedents to show the audience that this isn't all carved in stone like some of the other laws that have been around for a long time history, where we could say to the letter of the law, yes, you can do this, no, you can't. There's this weirdness of not quite knowing. Explain what Lori said in legal terms for people on that topic.
So precedents, yeah, I mean, it's and it's ever evolving too, right? I mean, it's
Yep.
still, it's still, I don't think that AB5 is, even been unraveled like 50% of the way of, how it could be interpreted. But in terms of precedents, it is referring to, those cases in the past that paved the way to set the stage for these, for the Borrello test that also came out of a lawsuit. The AB5 that came out of a lawsuit. And I really think that there are situations, or there are business owners where you do if AB5 didn't exist, you would have a true independent contractor, right? I mean, if we're relying back on the
Right.
Borrello test,
Yep.
but we're talking about all of those exemptions that came into play, and really, it could be interpreted any way right now, because even those exemptions, we haven't even touched like how vast they could be interpreted in so many different ways, for independent contractor to either be considered an employee, or to be determined to be considered an employee or an independent contractor. So it is really important for business owners to really understand the difference between the two classifications.
Yeah, and I agree on that. And I think that the case, if you ever do end up in court and you lose, a misclassification can be very costly to the business, to the point of being detrimental in many cases. I think that when we talk about AB5, I believe, and I'll give you kind of my take on it from a backstanding position, and you correct or give me your thoughts on it. And I'm going to start off by saying, when I went to get my IRS enrolled agent certification from the IRS, I thought, it's tax, it's IRS, it's been around forever, it's going to have these gray, no gray areas, it's going to be black and white for the most part with a few gray. I was shocked to see how much gray there really was, and how much precedents, laws that happened, cases that came up, were actually used when you are facing an audit with the IRS. Because part of my ability was to represent clients in an audit to the IRS, and how much pulling these old precedences really mattered in these cases that became questionable. Why I'm doing this, I'm going to overlap it with my thoughts with AB5. I think AB5 is so new and we still don't know. And it's very challenging because, like you said, some people that would have been easily an independent contractor prior to AB5 are now walking on questionable, if must be an employee. And yet we don't have precedents to go on. So I think having an awareness of the law, knowing what it is about, consulting with possibly lawyers if the case is very specific, and so you know what's going on because they'll know what precedents have been filed, and then making sure you have knowledge on how to strengthen your argument if it ever does come up, such as having a contract, etc. So I don't think it's always something that you can just go online and go, okay, yeah, that's the answer, but it's something that you seek the answers, you try best to understand, and you do what you can to strengthen your argument in case something comes up. And most of the time when it comes up is somebody filed unemployment thinking they were an employee, or something came to court where they didn't feel justified. And you never know, those things can happen out of the blue when you don't expect it. Is that a good summary of how a company can start looking at it?
That is a good summary, Lori. And I think, just to add to that or highlight, when businesses are engaging in this business to business relationship with other subcontractors and they're putting that agreement or that contract together, I always recommend to seek legal counsel to put that contract together for you, because I know that we now can even rely on ChatGPT to generate contracts for us these days, but it doesn't replace the expertise of an attorney with the law, right? And even the information we're sharing here is for informational purposes, because as you said, it's always evolving. But that's the one thing I would recommend. Like, if you are going to subcontract with another company, with another business, make sure that that contract has been set or reviewed by an attorney, and it's sort of been blessed, if you will. You are clear in that regard. And the other thing too is that once that relationship is established, you also, or business owners, want to be careful not to cross the line and override that relationship to make it more of like an employee-employer type of relationship. And what I mean by that is that a lot of times businesses, because they have this contract with this other entity sort of almost becomes part of their operations.
Yeah. And
now this company is crucial or is key to your operations. That could essentially be argued as, well, they're an employee because you couldn't operate without their services. Their services are key to your operations. Or permanency. That's another thing. And that's one thing that the IRS looks at when they determine whether someone is classified as independent contractor, is how long has this person been providing services for this business? Have they been in a relationship with this business for years? Or were they here for 6 months? Or are they here just like 2-3 months every year? Those are things that get taken into consideration also to determine whether they are true independent contractors, or they are employees. And the perfect example of that, when we talk about precedents now, it's triggering my memory. Microsoft was sued years back, for the same thing, because they had independent contractors working on projects, and those projects extended to years. And, those independent contractors were even part of the team meetings. They had their own email accounts with the company. All that gets taken into consideration. So at the end of the day, they were determined to be employees of Microsoft, not independent contractors. So why I'm bringing that up is just to put the example of how you can turn a true independent contractor relationship, you at any point, if you're not careful, you can override that relationship, and it can turn to be an employer-employee relationship. And at the end of the day, even if you have the contract, like I said, the contract does help, but it's not going to be the thing that's going to save you in front of a judge to say, well, no, we have an agreement and this is the relationship. They're going to look at what's in practice.
Yep,
And
that is so important. And, you don't even notice because relationships evolve and suddenly you're over a line. And, going back on the Microsoft example, I may be wrong on this several years ago, but I believe that how it came to play is stock options. The independent contractor were not getting stock options. The employees were getting stock options. And that's how it all came to light. So going, full circle from what I talked about at the very beginning, my emphasis is that really whether or not to hire somebody should first be a financial decision, and not hiring somebody and not increasing the sales accordingly isn't necessarily a bad thing, because our profits, our net profit is what matters. If you've got a high demand, simply increasing the price, having less customers come and work within your infrastructure may allow you to buy more quarts of milk than you were able to before. So it's a stepping back and looking at things financially, which I talk about. Every single decision should be a financial decision first. So what I like to express is when it comes to any kind of laws, state laws, federal laws, they're what I call the good, bad, and ugly. And sometimes what we have to do is we have to say, it is what it is. This is a rule, but that doesn't mean we follow it this way. That might mean we don't break the law, but we change the way we do business. We change the way we create our structure. We change the way we outsource everything completely. We make decisions. We just don't say, okay, this is the rule, so I must do this. And we jump down that road without even thinking through if that's the way to adjust. You see larger companies do that. I like to use the example, gas prices go up, the airplane tickets go up. In a small company, gas company prices go up, they don't increase their prices and they can't buy a quart of milk. It's a different way of thinking. So we've got two questions I'm going to bring up. And, one thing before I mention them, respectfully, you may be able to answer them, you may not, because these are all complicated situations. So sometimes the answer is, I don't know, right? But one person says, Mindy, I run a bookkeeping firm with workman's comp. My understanding is that any bookkeepers I hire have to be employees, but if I hire an admin, they can't be a contractor, as they would not be providing our core business services. Is that correct? I think it's much deeper than that that information. I think it goes much deeper to answer it, but you tell me your opinion on that question.
So we go back to, is this going to be a critical role to the operations of the business? And are you going to be telling them what to do, right? So an admin, again, I'm going to go back. Without knowing all the logistics of the situation, but I'm going to go back. If this is sort of like a, virtual assistant business, if this person has like their own established business that they provide admin services for businesses to outsource to, then I'd say, yeah, you're probably clear there, because they're established business and they're going to be providing just services to you, right? So we want to make sure you get that into an agreement and proceed with caution, but proceed. If you're actually going to classify them as 1099 as a contractor, and this person is going to be told, because as an admin assistant, right, they don't have, even at a company, they don't have the ability to have their own judgment and work under their own work on their own to get the work done. So usually someone oversees their work and tells them how it needs to be completed, what needs to be completed, at what hours. And if that's going to be the case, then this person is best to be classified as an employee, part of your team that's going to be tending to the admin needs of your team.
Awesome, thanks. Now, Brenda says, I do speech therapy and contract with state regional centers. We are considered independent contractors, but they tell us what our rates are. How does that work? Just curious. For me, a lot of times it's people don't always follow the rule. I don't know. What's your answer on that? That's the best
Yeah.
one I got.
That is what I would say. My question would be, how did the relationship come about? Was it you pursuing them as a client, or is it them pursuing you as an independent contractor, and then telling you, we're going to pay you this much for the services you do for us? So I'd be curious to know, who's pursuing whom.
She said she applied as a vendor.
Okay, she applied as a vendor, and then then she applied as a vendor, then she should be able to set her own rates. So I agree with you. They're not following the rules.
Yeah, they're just not following the rule. And you know what? It happens a lot. That's why I said, there's reality. And then there's what, we talk about when we talk black and white. We love to put life in a nice little book, and it's got pages and it's all formatted in a table of contents. But in actuality, I'm old now. I can tell you that, guys. Even though I'm not 60, I'm old. It's not like that. It's not like that at all. I want to go through one more thing. But before I do, I want to get to something real important. I want to let everybody on the call know that you are also an advisor at the Pasadena SBDC. Now, I also know that you do hold workshops. I don't know if you have one coming up or you're planning one. Do you have any workshops coming up we can talk about?
We have a workshop that's coming up actually this Friday, but it's not directly through the SBDC. It's through the Senator Portantino for the San Gabriel area. So there is going to be, I'm just one of 3 panelists there. So just giving a brief update on current HR regulations or employment regulations that came into effect as of the 1st of this year. We are possibly planning to have more webinars down the road on HR topics, hiring employees. If people have, topics that they want to see covered, we're more than happy to take those under consideration as well.
Perfect. And if Annie's hanging out with us today, you throw your information, Annie, into the chat so everybody knows, because Annie is who runs, I always say Annie runs, sorry, Dawn. Annie runs the SBDC.
She does, she truly does, and she does an amazing job at it.
If Dawn's listening right now, sorry, Dawn, you're the director, I know, but Annie's running everything, right? But if Annie, if you're out there, throw your information in, or Lauren, if you have Annie's information, throw it all in. And also, anytime you want to know anything, you can always get in touch with Lauren. Lauren has the connections to everything. So we only have a couple minutes left. So I'm going to bring up something that might just be off the wall that I just noticed once or twice, but just in case anybody else has this experience. Because like I said, I meet with so many people, and then somebody says something and I think, oh, nothing of it. And then somebody says something else and I'm like, what is going on? So I had a situation where a company got a letter from, I think it's EDD or the Franchise Tax Board, I can't remember which one it is. I think it's EDD, where they owed more in payroll taxes for the past year than they paid in, and they got a fine and they had to pay it in. And they were asking me about a QuickBooks entry for this additional payment, and they showed me the letter just for that purpose. But when I looked at the letter, it was like they got the rate wrong or something, like they paid in the wrong rate. And I didn't think anything of it, and I said, well, what do you do? And they go, well, we're using QuickBooks for our payroll. And I'm not a big fan of that, because QuickBooks is not a payroll company, right? Smart, I didn't think anything of it. Fast forward another month, I get another client just this last week say, I'm having to pay more and they're trying to charge me for before I had employees. I go, that doesn't make sense. Let me look at the letter. And it said that they paid by the same rate. I said, how are you doing it? Well, I'm using QuickBooks for my payroll. So I am wondering if QuickBooks is not adjusting the rates as they're supposed to, like an ADP would, or I'm not even trying to solve this problem as much as I just want to throw out the audience and get your take on it. The importance of going with a payroll company and knowing these numbers and how it can come back to haunt you. And I'll let you touch on any part of what I just said.
Yeah, truly, if you're going to be using QuickBooks or any other system where you're going to be calculating your own payroll, you have to make sure that you are on top of the rates, the employer tax rates that you are calculating and that you are remitting back to EDD. One thing or one rate that tends to fluctuate is the unemployment rate, because unemployment insurance works just like any other insurance. If you have claims, if you have people that have taken unemployment or gone on unemployment, your unemployment insurance rate is going to likely increase. The rate can also increase just based on just based on like the economy. Like for example, right now, with all the pandemic unemployment that was paid out, that has also created a fluctuation on the rate for a lot of employers too. So more of the story, if you're going to be processing your own payroll, you want to make sure that you're checking that you have the correct rates to be calculating and remitting those taxes to EDD. If not, best thing to do is to go with a payroll company that can calculate those rates for you. They can remit those rates to EDD for you on a quarterly basis. And you just got to make sure that that has been done also timely, because I have talked to clients that have gotten letters saying EDD received their employer taxes late when they had a third party that processed them. So want to make sure that the third party payroll company you choose is one that's been around for a long time. Secondly, one that knows and is ideally based in California, because California knows California. Yeah. As complex as our laws and wage and hour laws are. And then third, keep in mind, EDD is watching their books like a hawk right now. I can't stress enough. So for all of you watching right now, make sure that you, if you have time to audit your books, please go ahead and audit your books. If you don't, hire someone that can audit your books, because EDD is really auditing everything. I dealt recently with a client that got audited for, in the topic we're talking about, independent contractors, misclassifying someone as an independent contractor, and they had to pay close to $20,000 for penalties, and that's just from EDD. So if you do get an audit from EDD,